Hey, what's happening out there, YouTube family? This is Robert L. Jones Jr. coming at you again with some more Tribal Judah poetry. All right. The first poem of the evening is entitled Beat Legacy, Bam Ancestry. This poem here is a celebratory piece talking about two particularly, in my personal opinion, that there were two wonderful, two great and excellent movements that took place in the 20th century as far as poetry was concerned. The first one, of course, was the beat movement that was taking place back in the 50s. There were a lot of poets that thrived during that time period, and they had a movement called the beat movement. That's where the beatniks and all the hipsters and all the cool people were doing poetry and listening and playing jazz music and things like that. Real cool time. Of course, I wasn't born in the 50s, but I learned a lot about it. So that was one of the movements that inspired me to be the writer that I am today. Another poetry movement, as well as art movement that took place back in the late 60s to the early 70s, was the Black Arts movement. And that was another dynamite movement of poetry and art with an Afrocentric creativity in the mix of that. And that's another movement that has inspired me to be the writer that I am today as well. So I wrote this poem in honor of those two movements, the Beat movement and the Black Arts movement. Okay, the poem again is entitled Beat Legacy, Bam Ancestry. In that rather dank and unsavory period of sheer desperation for all things revolutionary, I'd be suddenly remembering all of those mightily momentous days and nights of radically assertive artisanship, when charismatically burning thespians of erudite defiance done boldly exercise their many creative executions of anarchistic freedom, and with the courageously unruly resistance of antagonistic bravado, they totally commune together within their equally yoked up commonalities of some humanly bonded camaraderie, thus harmoniously putting their perfectly like-minded psyches in that universally cerebral unity of cipher integrated oneness, so that with one strongly pitched voice of righteous rebelliousness, they would be so amazingly audacious in their verbally combative dissertations of fervently scribing an inflammatory multitude of fire-sizzling drafts and politically militant manuscripts of poetically protesting dissidents against every single one of those wickedly reactionary proponents of a society controlling status quo, which has so heinously succeeded in forcefully placing subtly ensnared necks and ankles inside of the crudely designed stocks of culturally stultifying enslavement. But despite them historically recorded miseries of tyrannically sly objectives and a wretched orthodoxy of coldly conservative domination of spirits, my deeply pensive recollections of noteworthy nostalgia help me immensely in vividly recalling that ever glorious dispensation when an extraordinarily proactive collection of trouble-rousing artisans were definitely expert in their fiercely enthusiastic endeavors of loudly speaking them exceedingly harsh truths and those ever granular grandiosity of rugged reality about how earnestly corrupt and how incredibly sinister those madly authoritative scoundrels really were. As these domestically terrorizing dragons have been so perniciously impassioned within their craftily fashioned agendas of vocally excreting that bull-crapping propaganda of some big brother worshiping dogma, which through divinatory lips of deceitful talk and by those orally conniving expressions of beguiling discourse, There was the dictatorial demand for Uncle Sam and them, for every red-blooded American to willingly forfeit the priceless inheritance of their purely begotten liberties, and then shortchange in exchange for their submissively rendered tact for being genuinely democratic, all diverse manner of swindled citizens be so heavily duped in agreeably receiving them demented triple sixes of soul chaining compliance to the traditional fundamentals of righteous servility and the neo-colonizing doctrines of some old way debauching uniformity, so philosophically subtle and predatory to that oblivious specimen who has been secretly programmed with the brainwashing Illuminati of patriotically indentured serfdom and conformity. But notepad and pen became the bombastically offensive artillery of choice for a dangerously articulate party of civil rights rapping rhapsodists and Occidental Bolsheviks, as they were extremely gifted within their own literary faculties of fearlessly challenging the pseudo-sovereign canons of power-hungry archfiends and those authority-thirsted adversaries of the people. And with enfranchising words and voraciously released verses of bitterly belligerent wisdom, all mangled up dimensions of verboten timidity were absolutely forsaken and left to forevermore vanquish into the despondent netherworld of derelict nothingness. And from the subterranean valleys of a thoughtfully fertile underground emerged a consciously stimulated family of dynamically outspoken laureates and them greatly controversial geniuses of griot unction intelligence. And they brought with them their anthological volumes of violently aroused speeches and angrily venturesome veracity, so unapologetically honest and so uncompromisingly sound in mind-expanding knowledge and enlightenment. So much so that a cloak and dagger enamored system of hate-loving delegates became overwhelmingly stricken with effectual panic and dismay when it was widely known and clearly understood that there was indeed a socially prolific gathering of mentally emancipated bards and brilliantly devious writers of both battling prose and them scrimmaging utterances of warring rhyme. And these artistically brazen authors of academically sharpened up conviction sure enough had it going on during those horrific heydays of racial segregation, murderous lynchings, and infernal riots on the urban streets of the bluesy ghetto. As they were richly enunciating all of their verbatim phrasing beliefs of community strengthening virtue and survival to the cleverly melodic rhythms of jazzy bongos, to the magically eclectic cadences of a funky set of Africa-inspired congas, and to the deeply booming bottom of a bebop striding double bass as it smoothly resonates its baritone notes of infectiously mellowed out exquisiteness. Yea, and those purely bohemian vowels and ever-beatnik consonants of sweetly idealistic revelation be leaping wildly from the gold-leaf pages and dog-eared parchments of smartly published archives from a Boston copacetic movement that supremely summoned the chosen oracles of Kerouac, Ginsberg, and Dylan. And eminently volatile masterpieces which phenomenally flow from the beautifully heroic lips of Baraka, Giovanni, and Sanchez would suddenly become the lively evidences of vitally effervescent revolts and lyrical mutiny against the disgustingly decadent company of synthetic conventionalists and their GOP praising embassies of gravely unchanging craziness. So with the respectfully retrospective fondness for the poetically emblazoned pioneers that uniquely preceded me and my generation, I will no longer be hopelessly stranded within that rather dank and unsavory period of sheer desperation for all things revolutionary. For my own Promethean epistles of originally unleashed struggle will surely abide and happily coincide with that tenaciously solid continuation millennially reminded of westernizing Babylon, that we postmodern hippies and eccentric comrades of oppression, defective resistance, shall overcome. The second poem of the evening is entitled Soul Children of the Future. 'Tis shown up the most beautifulest makings of self-esteem interpreting convocation, when mind optimistic optics of happily optimizing observation widely coincide on with that funky eyes of the prize visualizing revelation of a youthfully new and show improved generation, who is prolifically digging indeed upon that brightly befitting reality of being today's contemporary beneficiaries of futuristically regenerating pride, strength, and dignity, as they radically manifest out that adolescent copacetic aesthetic of mightily arising unafraid until that developmentally phase transcending maturity of effectively hope and dream preserving the God prophesying narration of their lifetime dedicated proclamation to successfully stay permanently diligent within this upscale determinating conviction, and never falling down as encaptured prey into the craftily entrapping situation of getting themselves suddenly locked away within the Guantanamo Bay haze of detention, of wicked death row overthrowing extinction, but instead on that call and election assuring derivative of a young adult inducting alternative, these intelligently self-illuminating soul children of Summer Star exemplar representation have quintessentially been millennium lifted up so phenomenally fluorescent and so amazingly majestic within these solely exquisite Shekinah remnants of another level prevailing perseverance, all speechifiably emancipate forth this univocally intercessory philosophy of blessed tomorrow's most joyfully superseding destiny. Pardon me, if you please, the up-and-coming image and likeness of a successful M.E. in the A.D. as I actively G.L.I.D.E. into that confirmably Y.E.S. affirmable creed of true indeed, and thereby self-energize that never say die out crying electricity, so that I could legaciously fly up higher than high upon the vivaciously inflaming wings of a newly resurrected Phoenix King, that has refreshingly arisen so victoriously from the sackcloth and ashy perditions of so many cursedly adversive derisions, that have ultimately failed so miserably in maliciously steal, kill, and destroying away the faith-establishing integrity that supremely God defines the almighty decreeing guarantees of my righteously rightful accessibility to every good and perfect thing that my everlasting Father has yesterday, today, and forevermore promised unto me. So as you can see, 'tis shown up the most wonderfulest recompense of outer self-esteem expressing celebration, when mind perceptually sparkling windows of the soul are both proudly synchronized one time with that positivistic synthesis of blissfully witnessing with some gratefully focusing optometry the energetically extroverted individualism of my good example improvising soul children of the future, who would colossally be open door actuating right on through to the other side of that cipher shining existentialism of characteristically radiating this practice what you preach in methodology, to never compromisingly interlay within the dry bone comatose valley of apathetically accepting that Laodicean simplicity, to just lazily settle for the lukewarm tendency towards second best deadening conformity, Because these solely iridescent descendants of extraordinarily life-creating culturism are all confidently goal apropos to the interpersonally galactic effervescence of some worthily soul prospering excellence. As they universally trailblaze on high in mediocrity defying unison, towards those strident sky monopolizing possibilities and starship enterprising yeseries of some wealthily enrapturing certainties that will most definitely LAST generationally until the LIGHT encompassing infinity of a LORD enlightening eternity will show enough officially make the sacredly foretelling declaration of Revelation 22 verse 1 the good book fulfilling translation of new heaven and new earth rebirth and salvation. Thank you so much for listening to these poems. I hope you like what you heard. Please like, subscribe, share, and comment. Also, please donate to Tribal Judah Poetry. Just go to Browse channel, click on that, type in Tribal Judah Poetry. There you'll find the channel and you'll see the PayPal button right there on the channel. So please, please, please donate to our channel. It'll be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much in advance. I'll come back at you with some more Tribal Judah Poetry. In the meantime, I bid you shalom.